let's begin. Okay, can you see? Oh, I need to turn off the sound. Oh.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, for
It's
sure.
not full screen though.
Like that? Is that good?
No, there's a full screen button. Like if you go down, cursor down a little, top right.
Oh, like this? Oh, okay, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning on doing that, but if that helps the user experience for you guys, then like I'll do it. Okay, so hello, welcome to the UI UX lessons. There will be 3 of these, and Tijmen and Jasmine are going to be teaching them. It's going to be a fun group effort. Let me see if I can full screen this. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, so we're taking a break from coding. I know you guys have sat through a lot of React lectures, so it's been a lot, but now we're gonna put on our creative pants, like I already said. I already made that joke, but we're gonna dive into some design and how to make your coding to look pretty. So yeah. Okay, so on today's agenda, we'll go over an intro to UI UX design, so general topics. We're going to talk about their differences. We're going to talk about what you do as a designer, some tools that you use, and then Tijmen and Jasmine are going to so kindly lead us through a Figma tutorial. Figma is a very powerful and useful tool in design. It's all of our personal favorites, I believe. So yeah, it's very widely adopted. It'll be very fun. Cool. So before we begin, I always like to have this slide. If you ever have questions, feel free to interject and ask, or if you feel better just messaging me in the chat privately or generally, feel free to do that as well. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so intro to UI UX. So let's first ask the general age-old question: what is design? So basically, design is designing, creating things to be a certain way to achieve a certain goal for the user. And for the user, because design is user-centric, anything that you design is aimed to make the user want to come back to it. So for example, like this can happen in physical products like this desk chair that I picked up on the side of the road. It's very great. And if I lost this chair, I would in fact go back to IKEA and buy another one because it's very nice. I think it has a great UI. And then in the digital world, we have apps and platforms like Facebook, Airbnb, even Figma that all also incorporate some levels of UI UX design. So design concerns both like stuff in the physical and the digital world. And for our lessons, we're going to mostly focus on digital interface designs because we're not mechanical engineers. We are in fact software engineers and designers, or whatever you are. I'm not going to put you in a bucket, but design is a very broad topic. Everything is designed to be a certain way for a certain reason. So make sure you're looking out for like everyday things that you can see around you that are, designed the way that they are. So yeah, Tijmen is going to do this because he loves talking about doors. So
yeah.
I'm going to touch him for a sec.
As the mechanical engineer in the room, I do have to talk about doors. So around like during the 1990s, when design was becoming a bit more popular and people started to think about like, hey, what if we don't just make a product, but we make a product with the user in mind? So Don Norman kind of formulated this design ideology and structures that we can use to think about how we design things. And so in his book, The Design of Everyday Things, this one, would highly recommend reading it if you're interested. He goes over this example where he talks about this friend of his that went into like a postal building. And this postal building has 2 rows of doors to get in to like manage the airflow in and out of the building. And so his friend, he pushes on one of the doors, and they're kind of like swing doors that you can just push and pull on, and they'll go either way. So he pushes through one door, and he ends up between the 2 rows of doors. And he gets distracted for a second. And then when he turns around to push on the second door, he pushes and nothing happens. The door doesn't budge. So he like looks around, he walks over to another door, checks it again, like maybe the other one was locked. And then he sees another group of people exit the building, and his friend manages to make it through. So the question here is, what about the doors was so badly designed? And these doors were so focused on aesthetics that there were no markings on the door to indicate where the hinge was. So when the friend was pushing on the door, he was actually pushing on the part of the door that goes through the rod. And so um, what this example shows us is that whenever you design anything, two of the main principles that Dawn mentions are discoverability and let's see what else. Discoverability and understanding. So um, these are two really good words to keep in mind as you design your things. And yeah, one good example of this is those fire doors where it's very obvious where the latch is in case you need to like get out of the building quickly.
That's facts. Thank you for speaking those words, Tijmen. Those are some truths. Okay, moving on. So let's talk about UI versus UX. We haven't really defined these words for you yet, so they might be a little bit arbitrary. But let's start with user interface design, which is UI. So UI is highly related to UX, but more so concerns the visual elements on the page. So if you look at this interface down here, an interface is just basically the thing, the visual that the users are interacting with. This interface on here is of my Facebook homepage from like a long time ago. And you can see like this interface has a lot of different things on it. It almost has like maybe too many things on it, but user interface design like concerns the font typing of the stuff on the screen, the color schemes, the icons and the buttons, spacing of everything, like making it look cluttered versus making it look spaced out and like airy. Animations are also included in images and all this stuff basically listed on the side here. But yeah, basically user interface design concerns the things you can see and the way that they look on the page and work together. And then user experience design is very different. User experience design doesn't really concern anything visual. A lot of times it concerns like these intangible interactions and experiences that users have with a product. So by definition, it's the art of designing interactions between users and products. And this might sound a little bit fuzzy at first, like I don't know the difference, and I get that. So after we'll show you like a little case study to more like better illustrate this. But like I said, UX design is not about the visuals at all. It focuses on the feel and the flow of the experience, and UX design, like I said earlier, concerns any type of product, physical and digital. UX is very, very user-centric. Of course, all design is, but when you're designing a user experience, you really do have to keep in mind like who the user is, like what groups they fall into, and like how you can create things to be a certain way to make sure that it benefits like a specific user the most. And I found on Wikipedia that it includes ease of use, efficiency, and utility. So keep those three things in mind because Wikipedia said so. So UI UX also, they also have this like love story between them. That's UI, that's UX. And basically like UI UX, although they're very different, they're highly, connected because the visuals of UI influences the experience. So you have like a really, really ugly website, the user experience is inherently going to be a little bit worse as compared to like a website with really nice graphics and really nice visuals. UI, what was I saying? UX is all about making an experience better. Yes. And then, yeah. So all in all, UI UX go hand in hand. UI concerns visuals, UX is not visual. I'm going to drill that into your head, but they are highly connected. So here's actually a fun example of like bad UX, bad UI. Wait, no, bad. Okay, I'm just gonna go into each example. So on the left here, we have the Apple website, and I think the Apple website is like known to be notoriously like simple. So in that sense, you can say, hey, like the UI of the Apple website is not the best in the sense it's not like super. Doesn't have that much personality. It's just kind of like, here's our product, right? But like you can see how the experience can be really good because like it draws your attention immediately to exactly what they want you to see, right? And like it's literally just a photo of the product and like the text, like this short text that tells you everything that you need to know. Versus on the right hand side here we have, so sorry to go back, the Apple website would be example of bad. I wouldn't consider it that bad, but like bad / plain UI, and then really good UX. And then on the right hand side, we have like these really fancy like photo collages, but the call to action is kind of harder to find. Like the focal point is a little bit more fuzzy, so users would probably have to spend a little bit more time to see like what exactly Microsoft is offering to you when they show you this page. So yeah, and then here's an example of what I consider good UI, good UX. There's a very clear call to action up here in this bar where it lets you search like all your details for your trip. It's pretty clear, like, you're booking a place. It kind of gives off hotel vibes, but like this graphic and the really like clean interface makes it really nice to look at as well. So yeah, wait, hold on. I missed one point. Okay, you know what? I will send that later. But basically, yeah, UI, UX, different things, but connected. So we're gonna talk quickly about a case study of sorts. It feels professional to call it that. On a startup called Huddle. I worked on this startup last summer. It kind of died now, unfortunately, but I was the designer for this startup. So that was fun. But I like to point out some of the ways that we can like illustrate design a little bit better. So I feel it at least when I think about design, there's a bunch of different types. And here we're going to highlight 4: brand design, UI, UX design, and then product design. And they're all like very different / on like different levels of the process. So when I was designing the brand, brand design is basically just like, hey, I have this company. I want to I want to make this logo for them. I want to choose like this color scheme. I want to create like a general vibe that the company or like the product gives off. So basically when I was designing for Huddle is it's a video chatting platform. Back when the pandemic was going very strong. Basically we built this platform for people to like connect online better in like a better format. And basically I was designing the brand and I was basically writing out these like bullet points here talking about like what kind of vibes I wanted the company / product to give off. There's like 3 examples here of like assets I created for the brand design. So this is, I guess, an example of designing a brand. When I was looking at it, I was like, I want the brand to look really bubbly and like really kind of free flowing. But I also wanted it to look like it wasn't tied down to like a certain color scheme. Like we use different gradients in a lot of our branding to like kind of differentiate them, even though like technically you're supposed to have a solid color scheme. But I think that was the point, was like make it fluid. So next we can talk about user interface design. This was actually like the platform itself. This is what the video chatting screen would look like. And Justin is here, as well as Albert with his dog, and Andy. You might recognize some of these faces. But yeah, so basically this interface involves a bunch of different aspects to it. Like the font, for example, like we wanted it to be super modern, super clean, easy to read. The icons, when you're choosing icons, you want them to be very simple and very straightforward, especially in like in a platform like this, you're interacting live with someone else, right? So when you're doing actions, like you want them to be very instant. You want to be able to like find exactly what you need, which is why we had to make sure that all the icons like look super simple and very straightforward. And then colors, we made them customizable. That's like more of a user experience, like fun thing that we added. It's not like super important, but and then here controls should show on mouse move, basically like also kind of concerns user experience, but it was like a little tidbit that we added. But yeah, this is the interface and kind of the process of designing it. And then we have the user experience design on the left here. We have this flowchart kind of maps out like the ways that users can go to different screens. This is just one aspect of user experience design. Obviously, there's a lot more. But some questions that we had to ask ourselves when it came to UX design was like, let's see. So here's an example of 3. For example, how should you show user they've successfully copied the link? Basically, here we have like this button that allows you to like copy the link to the room and have someone else join. And when this happened, like at first I had just
written the code and I was like, okay, cool, we're done. But then someone was like, okay, like this kind of bad. Sorry, I'm not gonna swear. This kind of bad because like how do users know like if they successfully copied it or not, right? Because if you don't show anything that shows up, it's like, okay, like what did I just do, right? So we added like this little pop-up that said like link copied, and it's just a like tiny thing that really increases the quality of the user experience. And then this one is a little bit more serious, but you know, like the premise of this platform is that you have a bunch of different groups and then you can like jump between them. So when it came to designing the ways that users can move around, you know, you have to think about all the different like gestures that are available to the user and how to make it work. And you also have to think about like, hey, if someone's using this on mobile, there's some things that they can't necessarily do, or some like gestures that are not available on desktop. So yeah, these are some things you have to think about. And then what are some different ways a user can join a room? These are all great UX questions and can be refined through user research and interviews. And we'll talk a bit more about that when we get into, I think, our third lesson, which like has an emphasis on UX design and how to like fine tune it. And then lastly, we have product design, which is it's a very different, I consider it to be like a pretty different domain. Product design, product management is, you know, identifying like the user who we're building for and identifying their pains and like pains and converting them to gains by designing your product to have certain set of features. This is not really something that we're going to be dealing with because a lot of times when we're working with clients, like they kind of already have a vision. They have their own product owners, product managers who know like what features they want. But, you know, this is a very interesting field, basically identifying like a feature set that helps solve the problem of the user who is using it and create a solution for them. But yeah, these are some bullet points detailing what like product designers would do. Cool. That's the end of this case study. Does anyone have any questions thus far? I don't think I really stopped. Okay, cool. Cool, so now we'll talk about the role of the designer. So designers, of course, they design. And it all goes back to the user, kind of like what I said earlier. But when you're designing, designers always have to have the user in mind. Basically, you're trying to ensure the most desirable interaction between between the user and the product that you're designing. You sometimes, you know, you create graphics and site elements if you're a graphic designer. There's many different types of designs and career paths that you can go, or designers and career paths that you can go into. So that's something we'll touch on at the very end of this. But here's just a big list of all the things that you have to do. And one important thing is working with developers to meet client/user goals. The next slide actually is talking about what you have to communicate with the developer. So yeah, this is basically the role of the designer. Oh no, the image is not here. I would like to show you the image though, because I just think it's funny. Let's see. Okay, so devs are at your mercy. Try to make your designs nice, but keep in mind that the developers, like whatever you make visually, the developers will have to turn into code. So I feel like there's this trope where it's like the common like tug of war between developers and designers, because sometimes like designers are like, hey, I want this thing to look like this. And then developers see it and they're like, no way, I'm not doing that. It's gonna be way too hard. This has happened to me before. Like one time I designed a landing page that I was just like in love with. And then the developer was like, sorry, can't do this. So that's always disappointing. So make sure that when you're designing, you're keeping in mind that developers also have to do work on this and turn exactly what you made into code. So don't set your hopes too high sometimes. But yeah, also another key thing is that you have to relay all the necessary information to developers, like how pages flow into each other, like the user flow and like the little details I was talking about earlier that make the UX better. All of those little interactions also have to be turned into code. And then also make sure you're documenting your work just like in your code. This is a bad-ish example, but in Figma, you have like a bunch of different ways that you can mark your work and name your work. I didn't really do that here, but here you can like name things correctly and group them together in a way that makes sense for developers to read through. But we'll touch on those details more in depth later. So yeah, let's see what's in the chat. Are there jobs in which you design and develop, so both? So like, I'd say like from what I've seen, you typically, if you're looking at like a startup or a smaller company, sometimes they'll give you like a role where you both work on UI and coding. Like the internship that I just finished, it was a front-end engineering position, but I actually like redesigned one of their platforms like internally. So, and I was working at a startup. It was like an electric vehicle startup. So in that situation, like, yes, you can probably try to figure out a way to worm yourself into like design work. But when it comes to bigger companies, like if you're working at Facebook or like Google or something, typically, you could maybe give advice or insights to one or the other, but you'd probably have to focus on design or development, which is unfortunate. But definitely look into startups and seeing if there's any like places that offer flexible positions or give you like a better chance to grow your experience in another field. But yeah, good question. Let's see. Okay. Oh, and another thing to know is that like, even if you can't necessarily find positions that encompass both, I think it's really helpful to have like a broad skill set, especially when it comes to front-end engineering. I know like when you're applying to a front-end role, it's really important that you have an eye for design and like, how to take something nice and put it into code and also make it look nice. Because a lot of people don't have attention to detail and don't know what like looks good or doesn't look good. So they don't really have any way to like gauge if the code that they wrote like it will look correct. So it's definitely super, super helpful to know both. So yeah, now we'll talk about some of the tools that we use. So on the left-hand side, we have Sketch and Figma. Sketch is this Ruby thing, gem, and then Figma is the second one. Sketch and Figma are like, they serve very similar purposes, but I think the difference is that like Sketch is only on desktop, only on Mac operating systems, and then Figma is a desktop app that you can like super easily collaborate on, and it's just accessible from anywhere. So we like Figma. Figma's super nice. It's free too, so that's good. And then in the middle we have XD, which is basically Adobe's version of Figma. I've used it before. I don't know if Tijmen and Jasmine, you guys have any hot takes on this, but I just feel like I think XD and Figma are very similar, but I like how Figma is in desktop. In browser. XD is also desktop. And then this blue one is Framer. This one is interesting. It's for prototyping and like adding animations and like kind of taking your like static wireframe and bringing life to it by like connecting frames. Like I said, adding like transitions and stuff. Framer is marketed to be like the tool that you use with Figma, but I tried it and it like, I swear it just doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Maybe they've made updates on it, but if you want a prototyping tool, you can try that out. Then Adobe Illustrator is more of a graphic design tool where you can make like really fancy and like complex graphics for your website, whereas Figma is more for like putting those graphics onto a website frame and like putting it all together. So yeah, that's all for me. I'm done talking. Does anyone have any questions on any of the content we have covered? Okay, cool. If you have any questions that come up later, feel free to stay after, but I will hand it off to Tij, who is Tij and Jasmine. They're gonna do the Figma tutorial. Thanks.
Yes. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the Figment tutorial. So before we get started, I just wanted to check who has set up their Figma account with their student email, or I guess who hasn't. But like put a 1 in the chat if it worked, put a 0 if it didn't. Okay, beautiful. So our first step is to create a new Figma document. So can everyone see the screen okay? Okay, perfect. So in Figma, like just, or I guess I'll explain the interface a little. So over here, your recent page, self-explanatory, it just like puts all the projects that you've done. Drafts are like if you can indicate that something is a draft or if it's finished. And then as you get more involved with projects, there will be folders. So we like have a WDB folder where like all of our projects are put together. So let's get started by making a new Figma document. We can name it like, okay, so yeah, if at any time you think I'm going too fast or you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute and ask. Yeah, we can just keep it casual. So there are a few important elements to take note of. So firstly, we have this top bar, and this is where all of your tools reside. So if you click on the tool, it'll activate it, but you can also click on the arrow and you'll get a drop down with like different tools that align with the one at the top. And if you hit the Figma logo, you can get some more complex actions like all of these, back to files, you name it. So in the center over here, we have our workspace. So this is a blank canvas right now, but as we get started, we'll fill up this area. So then this left side, you'll see, and Vicky was showing it earlier, is where your object tree will start to like develop itself. So over here, you'll be able to see every single element that you put onto the page. And if you've used like Photoshop or MS Paint, you know, you might have noticed that once you use the brush tool and you put a stroke down, that stroke kind of becomes intangible. Like you can't select it and manipulate it afterwards. But the cool thing about Figma is that all of the objects that you put down will be vectorized, which means that they're described by a mathematical equation that allows it to be manipulated however you want and scaled up infinitely, which is useful for when you want to export things or when you want to print things. And then on the right side over here, we have a few tabs, which we will also get into. But for now, we're going to stay on the design tab. And over here, you'll get details about objects that you put down. So actually, before we get started with the workshop, let me just show you the power of Figma and how we can use it to really quickly create website ideas. So all of these were done by Lizzie Lau. She's on the Scholar Hub team. And we did this a little earlier in the semester to kind of get a vibe for what the client wanted and what they generally wanted the website to look like. So you'll notice that this is like super low fidelity. Like the lack of detail is very apparent. And that's intentional because at the start of your design process, you don't want to like commit to one design, to one layout, and then have the client say, "Oh, we don't like it. We don't like these squiggles. Like, can you do something more simple?" And then you can say, "Okay, well, look, I made this other version with less squiggles and more shapes. It's a bit cleaner." And then they're like, maybe a bit more simple. So then, you know, you can show them this. So yeah, Lizzie put these together really quickly. And that allowed us to get a vibe from the client before we started like uh, like iterating on one of the designs that they picked. So they picked this one. And so we kind of extrapolated all of those elements, tried some different color schemes. But this is really, it's a really effective way to use Figma to narrow down on a design without having to put too much effort into things that will get rejected later. So for today, we are going to make our own wireframe. So if you happen to look at the design application project, we came up with this fake company called Frikia and asked people to create a homepage for it. So when we're done, we will have something that looks like this. Here, let me just play. And this is also one of the great features of Figma, where you can, but you can like kind of, what the heck? That's so strange. Okay, there we go. Couldn't find the button. So you can kind of make these like fake websites. They're not coded, so it's not super robust. But if you're just like looking to show the client, like, okay, here's the website. Like after we finish coding it, this is what it'll look like. Figma is great because you can actually like click and scroll, and it's interactive, which is super cool. And the prototyping goes really deep. Like you can make some amazing stuff. Like Albert Tien, he came up with this one workshop where he like in maybe like an hour, he basically recreates the entire Spotify UI, like interactive too. You can like scroll around, you can click on things. So the prototyping goes really deep, and you can really become very skilled at it. So now we can get started with the workshop. So once again, please stop me if I'm going too fast. So Figma works by, first you need to create the box that you're going to put all your elements in. So this hashtag over here is the frame tool. So you can either click on it or you can hit the F button on your keyboard to make a frame. And you can draw the frame by click and dragging, or you can, once you hit the frame button over here, you'll notice a menu. And this menu has a bunch of presets. So for example, let's say that we want to start off coding our website for MacBook Pro screen. So all you have to do is click on that and it'll pop out a frame for you. So before we do anything else, we do want to make 2 pages. So we could either make another frame, or there's several ways to do this. You can copy paste it, Command C, Command V, or you can hold the what is it, Option button on Mac, and the what is it, Windows key on Windows. And actually, no, that's not true. I don't know the Windows shortcuts, but that's what it is on Mac. So now we have 2 frames. And let's say that we want to make this frame scrollable. So we want to make it a little longer. So over here on the right, we can control the width and the height of the frame. And Figma actually lets you use operators in the box. So if we want to make it twice as tall, we just type in *2 and it'll be twice as tall. Cool. So now we want to start populating our frames. So let's start off with this rectangle button, which is R for rectangle, very intuitive. And let's just like generally like kind of draw it out. And Figma will auto snap to the borders of the frame. So if we do this, you'll notice that the red line, yeah, So yeah, I guess the goal is for you guys to be following along. But if you feel like the pace is too fast or you don't feel like doing it right now, feel free to like shoot me questions in the Slack afterwards. So we, just by clicking and dragging, we're able to line up this header bar perfectly. So let's give it a little bit of color. You can be creative here. We were going for an orange this time. So once you select the box, you go to the right menu over here and you hit fill. And there's a few more options here if you want to do stuff with gradients. But let's just stick to the basics right now. You can move this slider around, pick a nice color, maybe like a pastel tangerine kind of color. Yeah, that looks good. So now that we have that, we want to start putting like all of the text on our page. And Figma has a cool built-in feature for this. There are many grid settings. So you can do, can you make it such that the bar is a certain fraction of the page? Yeah, I would recommend if you want to like get precise, you can always control the height and width setting. So if we know that our entire page is 700 and we want this to be exactly 10% of the page, we can make it 70 pixels tall. So the grid function is if you feel like being nice to your developer, you can use the grid to like in your website developing process. So I know that Bootstrap, for example, allows you to work in columns. You can also turn on rows, grid, and yeah, you can use these like as your intuition of like coding a website starts to align with like wireframing. You can start using these tools to really do yourself or whoever is coding your page a favor. So let's just for now do 12 bars. And you can also adjust the gutter. And I know this is how Bootstrap works, where it has columns and gutters. And so if you're working in Bootstrap, or your dev is working in Bootstrap, then it's always a good idea to use columns as you're developing. So let's just keep those on right now. And again, this setting appears when you go to the right bar and change this setting. You can also hide or unhide it with the I button. So let's just start out with a text. So once you click with the text, you can start typing. Pretty simple. And just say that we want to increase the font size a little bit. Maybe 48 is too big. 36. And you'll notice that the text box lines itself up with the columns. So maybe 24 is better. Cool. So once again, I'm holding the Option button to just make copies. It's faster than Command C, Command V. And it'll also like copy the properties like the text size and stuff. So one useful trick for keeping everything in line is while you you start picking up, you click to pick up the object, and then if you hold Shift, it only lets you move horizontally and vertically from the starting position of the object. So if I want to make like home, about, and catalog, I can just do this. And what I just did there is I'm holding the Option button and the Shift button at the same time. And then I click and drag. Then I unclick, and then I click and drag again. And that will make 3 copies of my text.
Can you repeat again how you copied? Sorry.
Yeah, so I have I select my original object, and then I hold the Option key, and then I also hold the Shift key. So right now I'm holding Option and Shift, but I haven't clicked yet. And so now when I click, it will allow me to, it will make a copy and it'll constrain it to the horizontal and vertical axes of the original object.
Thanks.
Yes. I'm going to take a quick drink of water. Okay, cool. So yeah, yeah, McCree said, you know, like you can always try to like eyeball it, but yeah, like these things are just such a like great quality of life thing. And I also, I think Figma is really great at like making super intuitive ways to line up your objects. So often, like if you're like trying to line things up, there's often like a smarter way to do it. Yeah. So, you know, no company is complete without a logo. So we're just going to make something pretty simple. So over here in the shape menu, you can either you can open up the shape menu and hit the ellipse button, and then you can draw your ellipse. And once again, the shift button is doing a lot of good stuff here because it constrains the proportions so you can only draw a perfect circle. Like you'll notice my mouse is going all over the place, but I can only draw a perfect circle. So now if I let go of shift, it'll let me like draw an oval. But let's say you don't feel like holding down the shift button, you can always manually change the width and the height. So you can make both of them like 200 or something. But yeah, like the shift button is definitely the best way to resize. So, oh yeah, and just navigationally, if you either hold down the space bar and click and drag, it lets you like pan around, or if you have a mouse, holding down the scroll wheel will do the same thing. Or I guess with trackpad it works as well. So one more useful trick is that like you can zoom in using command plus, command minus, or if you hold the let's see, command button, you can also zoom in with the scroll wheel. And I think it also works with trackpad. Yeah. So we're going to use this tool called the Pathfinder to combine the shapes into like one solid object. So let's say that we want another ellipse. So I'm going to hit the O button, and I'm going to draw another smaller ellipse. And feel free to like be creative here. So I'm going to line. So my first step here, let me just like copy paste over the logo that we're trying to make. Okay. So the first step is to create the cutout. So I'm going to make one smaller circle, and I'm going to like clip it into the big circle, and then click and drag to select both of them. And then over here, you have a few options. So I can union them, and it'll just put them together. I can subtract, I can intersect, or I can exclude. And yeah, I think these little icons help you kind of predict what's going to happen when you click the button. So let's just say that we want to subtract the selection here. So once we do that, it'll cut it out. But you'll notice that over here in our tree, this object, it still has both of the like components selected. So if I click on my tree and then click on ellipse 2, I can move it around and yeah, make edits later if I wanted to. So I can put the byte on top. Hold on. And then don't think that's a great strategy for eating an apple, but you know, everyone has their own way. So now this is like kind of you know, something that you have your own freedom in like, you know, creating it. And as you practice more, like you'll get a stronger intuition for like how you can combine shapes to form different shapes. So like you can imagine that this like little apple top thing is just the intersecting part between these two. So intersect, and for the sake of time, I am gonna speed things up a little. So for this bottom part, once again, we're just gonna like, you can cut the circle in half by just like splicing a square into it. Hitting the wrong button. So you can subtract, create that. Maybe let's make it a little smaller, like this, and then we'll just put it in. And also you might notice that sometimes when I expand things, they will expand from the center as opposed to one of the corners. So this is yet another cool keyboard hack where if you hold Shift and Option at the same time, it will constrain the proportions and expand it from the center. So I find this useful for like circular things where you don't really want it to expand from the corner. But yeah, as you play around with Figma, I noticed that for me, it's become like pretty intuitive. Like my hands just kind of know what to do when my brain, you know, wants to do another thing. So now we want to join. So we want to join all of these things together. So we can just hit Union, and we will have our completed logo. And then we can scale it up, scale it down, turn it upside down. Here, let's turn it upside down for the style. Increase the size a little bit. Okay, and this is a cool opportunity to show off another tool, which is the eyedropper. If you've used any other like graphic design tools, this one is pretty standard. So if I press the I button, my cursor will turn into an eyedropper, or actually, I don't even know. Yeah, I don't think there's a button for it.
You have to go to fill, and then there will be an eyedropper button there, I think.
Wait, where?
Fill on the right side, the right column.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks, Jasmine. So that's where the button is. So yeah, if I want to make this logo the same color as the other one, just click, and it'll copy it. So now let's delete the old one. And so now we have our header bar finished. And now what we want to do is we want to make it modular. So the goal of wireframing is to do like as little work as possible, because no one likes to like sit here and do this like all day, all night. So a cool trick is to use Figma's component function. So if you select all of the objects that you want to turn into a component, and this is kind of the same thing as storing something in a variable. And then you can use that variable anywhere else in your code. And if you change the original variable, it'll change in all of the other locations. So this menu item is the component icon. And so when we hit that, our box will turn purple, and it'll compress itself into a component in the tree. So if you expand that, we'll see all of our objects. And so now if we if we copy paste another copy of the component, here, let's just and again, I'm using the option button and then click and dragging to make a bunch of copies really fast. So now if we want to, let's say we don't want to we don't want it to be a homepage. We want it to be, I don't know, hello. So now it changes in all of the children of this first component.
Wait, if you
So
change, sorry,
yeah.
if you change any of the copies, will it change the parent?
So it actually will not let you edit the copy at all. So no matter how hard I click, or actually,
With text, it lets you, because I think it understands that's like a flexible thing. But with like color and stuff, it won't. But you can easily access the parent by right-clicking and pressing like find parent component. I don't know what the thing is, but
wait, no,
wait.
I think it does let you edit stuff, but yeah, okay. So I think once you edit something, it'll like unlink. It'll
Oh,
unlink that
okay.
property.
I see.
Yeah. Yes. So again, like this is, you know, very simple tool, but super powerful if you learn how to use it. So, yep. Now we've got both of our things, and let's just, you know, reapplying the skills that we learned earlier. Let's make a footer, and then the I button to get the eyedropper tool, and we want to populate. Actually, okay, copy pasting from your components is not a good idea. I would just recommend making another text box. So let's say we want to, you know, include some, what is it? Just like a synopsis of all the information on our page, like often happens in footers. Then we can just make some copies of the text boxes. And let's say that later we want to be able to click on these objects to go back and like navigate across the page. So let's just label them. And if we had a little more time, I would turn on the grid on this frame as well and make sure everything is lined up. But at this point, it's not super important. And you'll notice that these objects already kind of align themselves. So while I'm like clicking and dragging right now, it'll line my stuff up, and it'll show you the number of pixels between the objects. So let's say that we don't feel like, you know, like fussing with it and going, okay, like let me find the perfect midpoint. If your objects are out of alignment and you select all of them, so if you hold shift and then click on multiple things, it'll notice that like it'll be like, okay, do you want to line these things up? And if the answer is yes, you can click this button in the lower right hand corner and it will perfectly line all of these up. And now there will be these dots and dashes throughout your objects. So when you click and drag those, it will automatically evenly space all of your objects. So super useful. Another thing to like add to your Figma toolbox. So lastly, before I hand it over to Jasmine to show you guys like how to prototype it up, we're just gonna add some title. So let's just throw some lorem ipsum in here. Lorem ipsum is like the famous filler text. If you put lorem ipsum on something, it'll be very clear to anyone looking at it that you intend to add something to it later. So again, I'm holding shift and option to click and drag a copy perfectly horizontally. The lorem sit on it. Perfect. And then I want to edit the font size. There we go. So just to spruce it up a little bit, I'm just going to draw some rectangles, line them up like that. And I don't even have to try, like it finds the lineup for me, which is fantastic. Yeah, exactly. So Figma also really easily allows you to round the corners of objects. So I just like click on the rectangle, I zoomed in a little, and then when you drag these dots, you can edit the corners. And this is a little more advanced, but if you hold Option again, it'll let you edit the individual corners. But that's, yeah, like as you get into things. Right, so now let's just add a little more detail, like, let's say that you want like a carousel. So we can have these boxes span 3 columns. And again, if we want these boxes to be perfectly aligned, I just selected all of them. You can either click and drag, or you can hold Shift and then click on all of them. So click and drag, hit the 3 bars, and then if I select all of them again, I'll be able to like edit the spacing between them. Cool. So that is the end of my section. Do we have any more questions before Jasmine takes over?
Wait,
Mhm.
so like when you're working on a larger project, would you recommend like making a parent component for like the rounded box and making like just using that every single time you need to insert a picture? Like, are those common practices?
Yeah, so you can, it's really up to your own discretion, right? Like if you know that you're going to be having a bunch of pictures of the exact same size in the exact same frame on your website, then like, yes, totally turn it into a component and save yourself that work. Yeah, I think, like I always forget how powerful components are, and then I'll like make 3 boxes. And maybe in this case, it's like small enough to not super matter. But yeah, definitely as you start to work on larger projects, components are like your best friend. Okay, Jasmine, do you want to screen share?
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Okay, I know we're a little bit short on time, so I might be talking a little bit faster, but if you have any questions, as always, just slow down and let me know. So I'll be going over the pen tool first. Tijmen went over the type tool and the basic shapes. You can find the pen tool here. You have a pen and a pencil. So if anyone has used Illustrator before, the pen tool is really similar to Illustrator. It'll like automatically like snap you to the straight lines. But if you want to do a line, just go like that. And if you want to end the vector there, you just press enter. But if you want to make a curved line, hold like I'm using a trackpad. I don't have a mouse, but like hold your cursor down here and just drag. You can drag all over the place, and it'll give you all these weird curves. And then it'll let you continue as long as you don't press enter. So let's make a blob shape. Okay, so you can see, as always, like the pen tool is a little bit hard to get used to, but I think it's good if you're just making like simple shapes or simple icons. So if we want to fill it in, let's go here. Oh, I don't think Tijmen went over the strokes earlier, but so here's the fill and here's the stroke just on the bottom. You can take away the stroke just by clicking on this eye and you won't see it, or you can edit like how thick you want it to be. And then for the fill, I'll go over gradients a little bit, but if you go up here, it'll say either solid, so this will be a solid color, and then if you go to linear, you can choose different colors, so this will be at the top end. You can choose how far you want it to be. If you want to add 3 colors, you can just click in the middle, and then let's do that. So that's a really ugly gradient, but there we go. Yeah, so that's the pen tool, but as always, you can see there's like some irregularities when you use the pen tool if you're not like super skilled at it, and it's just a little bit harder to use. So a really great like shortcut that we can use is plugins. So let's see, if you go to this Figma icon in the top left corner, in the menu, there will be an option for plugins. And if you want to download it, just go to browse plugins and it'll bring you to like this menu and you can search a bunch of different ones. We won't do that right now, but just for your reference. So just to show you like what kind of useful plugins there are. Here's my list. And there's this plugin called Blobs if we want to make the blob that we went earlier, but a lot faster and a lot easier. Here we go. You can just click blobs and you can like adjust the complexity. So if we do like 20, oh, just kidding. If we do 9, it'll give us like a crazier blob than the last one if you want different contrast. And there we go. So that's a really useful tool if you want like simple shapes but don't have the time or just want some like more variability. And then, so here's another plugin. You guys have probably seen these avatars in a lot of places, but this is a really popular plugin. If you want like avatars but don't want to take the time to make all the vectors and all the graphics, they have a bunch of options here for you. Here we go. So they even have like just the body, just the head, and then all of them are vectorized. So you can double click into it and you can select like the different elements. Cool, so that's the pen tool. If anyone has any questions, let me know. Okay, cool. So Tijmen went over components, and I'll just be going over some other good practices in general. So we want to make sure that we name all of our frames just to keep yourself organized when you start doing more work and you have a lot more frames. It's really important when you're like passing stuff on to your client and to your other developers to name all your pages. So let's just name this home and we'll name this about. You can just name it by double clicking on it or double clicking on it here. And then, oh, we want to learn how to group stuff. You didn't group this right, Tijmen. Okay, so if you want to group anything, you can either just drag your cursor over it or you can click on them individually and press shift. And then you can group it just by going right clicking and then going group selection. So now you see they're all grouped together and you move all of them at the same time. So that's really useful if you have like a set of elements that are meant to like be in the same category or something, and you want to make sure that they're all being edited in the same way at the same time. Okay, and next is creating styles. So styles are kind of like presets that you can add to certain, to either text or color so that you can standardize elements. So if we, let's turn this into a style. So let's make this the header. So if you go into the text section right here and click on this little 4 dots, you'll see that there are different styles. So we don't have any right now. So if you click on the plus button, you can name it, let's name this header. And then it'll turn that into like a standard preset that you can use for everything. So let's see, if we go here and then go to text. Oh, I guess this is already under the header one. But if you want to break the style, just click on this. And then let's say we want to change it to like 12 font, that's really small. And then we want to change it back to the header. You click on that and it automatically changes it back to the font and the sizing that you had before. So you can do the same thing with colors. We have a style, I believe, called like, oh, just kidding. Oh, that was in the other file. So we don't have any styles right now. Let's just name this colors. So that will be like a color that you can have like a set palette if you want, if you're like working with a brand or anything, or you have a set color palette that you like, you can use the same color palette for everything and it will always be saved in your colors. So let's say we made this purple, blue, and we wanted to change it back to our color palette, then we can click on that and that will always be there for you to use in your Figma file. Okay, and then next I'll go into prototyping. We have 6 minutes left. So like Tijmen said in the beginning, when you're showing your work to clients or to developers and you want to show them how the user flow works, prototyping in Figma is a really good tool, and that's why Figma is so widely used by a lot of designers and developers. So if you want to prototype, let's click on, let's say we want the About page to go to here when you click on it. So in the menu right here, I'm like moving the zoom header around because it's blocking everything. But so instead, you'll see that we're on the design mode right now. So it has all of our properties. But if you want to go into prototype, just click right here. And then you'll see that there's like a little plus sign here. Just drag it to the page that you wanted to go to. And you can select different settings, like if you want it to enact the action on the click, on the drag, while hovering, etc. There's a lot of ways to customize it. So we'll just leave it on click and navigate to about. And likewise, let's go down here and have this go to the home page. Okay, so you'll see this goes back to home. And then if we prototype it, turn it slow. So if we prototype it now, that you'll see if we click on the about page, it'll go into the about page. And then if we click on home, it'll go back to home. Yeah, that was like a very, very simplified like prototyping. Usually you'll have things going all over the place, but that was just to show you how it works. And then does anyone have any questions so far? Good, okay, great. Now that okay, so when you're doing wireframes and stuff or doing a design, a lot of times you'll want to import elements. So to do that, I don't know if there's like there probably is another way to do it, but I just do it by going like place image in the basic shape section, and then let's just place like a transparent PNG, and then you can place it like either in the frame, outside the frame. And then, yeah, you can edit the size like that. So you can find a lot of like transparent PNGs just on Google, or like there's a lot of different image websites. We probably have like links to them in the resources, but so that's how you import images. And then if you want to export a certain frame into like a PNG or something, that's really common because we often make like slides or presentations or posters in Figma. And then you want to export it to like Google Slides or something, you just right click on the frame and then to move my settings. And then you have like a copy and paste option here, and then you go copy it as PNG, and then it'll copy it for you. And then you guys can't see this anymore, huh? New share. Okay, great. And then now I just made an empty slide, and then now you can see if I press paste, it'll paste the frame for us. So that's really useful if you're making slides or want to transfer anything over. It'll just copy everything in that frame, but you have to make sure that all the elements that you want are in the frame that you've designated as. Yeah. I think that's all that I had for the end of the tutorial. We're like just about time, so that's great. Did I miss anything, Tijmen?
Want to talk about how to hunt for transparent PNGs?
Yeah, maybe you. I'm not as good, or like I don't have as much experience with that. Do you want to go over that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so often when you're designing stuff, you're like, okay, well, let me just figure this out. You're like, oh, okay, well, I need a PNG for this or that. So let's say that we want to advertise our beautiful chair that we're selling. So if you Google like chair PNG, and then go here, you can do this, or Google has their own transparent filter, which is somewhat reliable. So the telltale sign that a picture, once you copy it from Google Images, will be transparent is if in the thumbnail, it looks to have a white background, but then when you click on it and it loads the preview, it has a checkered background. So we know that this chair will be transparent when we copy it. So if you right click and hit copy image, that way you don't have to like save it to your computer, end up with like a bunch of garbage in your downloads folder. And then when you paste it into Figma, it just works. So, and sometimes it like doesn't, like you can't really do it by right clicking. It only like accepts the command for some reason. But yeah, so now we can, add a very compelling picture of our chair that people will want to buy. Any questions on that?
Tijmen, do you want to go over how to change like the ends of your strokes, if you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Forgot.
So we can take this beautiful stroke that Jasmine made. And so you'll notice that right now it's like a rectangle. You're like, that's looking kind of corny. So if you hit, what is it, the 3 dots and advanced stroke, moving up in the swimming class, we can do something like butterfly. Oh, just kidding. You can do like round or like square or like breaststroke. Yeah. So that's very useful for, like, for example, if you want to make a little bar that goes under your text, you're like, okay, yeah, I want people to know that they're on the about section. So then do that. And also for the stroke, you could either type in the number, or if you just click and drag on the icon, you can like increase it and decrease it. All right, perfect. That about wraps up the workshop. We can put in the hello section too. Oh, not quite like that. That about wraps up the workshop. But yeah, we can take this time to do any final questions before we all head out. All right, you might be wondering, what does the order of the objects mean? Well, a great example for this is, for example, when I click and drag this bar into to be under the hello section, it thinks that this bar wants to be part of a component. That's not true though, because now we get that bar over here. That's kind of inconvenient. So we can manipulate the tree directly. So we can actually just drag the vector out of the component, like, and like save it from the grasp, the component, and just put it on top. And that way, Figma won't be confused. You won't be confused. Whoever you're showing your thing to won't be confused. And another useful thing to note is that the order in which the like items appear here, let's call this like bar, is like topological. So I'm not even sure if that's the right word, but the order in which you stack these is important, because right now this component is like layered on top of the bar. So the bar is still there. Like if we move the component, the bar is here, but we can't see it because of the way that the tree is structured. So when we drag it on top, we'll see the bar. And a shortcut for this is command brackets. And like, we'll get back and forth. Okay, cool. Vicky, do you want to go over the homework real quick?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I forgot. I don't have it pulled up anymore. 1 sec.
Okay, I can pull it up.
I got it. Okay.
Okay.
Here we go. Not that. Homework. Okay, so homework, I believe it should be in the lesson plan. If not, we'll update it after this lesson, but we have this website. I think this is Scale. I don't know what they do, but they have a cool site. But yeah, basically we're taking this website and you're gonna basically recreate it. Okay, they changed it. So reference these. Basically, when we just want you to recreate this landing page, you don't have to do these graphics. They're very complex unless you really want to challenge yourself. Feel free to like do it in Illustrator just for fun. And then basically what happens is that when you press this button, you should prototype it such that this button leads to this page, which is the second page you have to recreate. And don't worry about like trying to find the exact font or anything or the exact photo. Just try to make like put placeholders in if that's easier. But yeah, that's basically what you're doing. It's pretty straightforward. And yes, any questions on the homework? Oh, also, none of like the other buttons have to have any functionalities. Like there's no code involved in this. So yes. Okay, cool. That's all. Amazing. Okay, cool. Thank you guys for coming. If you have questions, feel free to stay behind and ask. I know we're a few minutes over, so yeah. Thanks, guys. Hope you have a good night or day. Yes, thank you. Wonderful. Let me